Welcome to the Dad's Nerdy Ambitions podcast. Before I actually get into my episodes, for my viewers that are actually watch the YouTube video, you can look and you'd be like, Steve, where's all your nerdy background? Why are you wearing a shirt with a cat on it? Why are there tons of kittens in your background? Well, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here before we start this, because the last few episodes I have done, where I have tried to promote and tried to give the love to my guest who I have on this show, has been, well, I have been slapped in the face by AI, for a lack of better words. YouTube has decided that my background, something in my background is shocking content, to which YouTube couldn't even say what it was. And so I decided, fine, they want to play that game. I will give them kittens, and I will rock Princess Donut from Dungeon Crawler Carl, because one of my favorite books, and because we are talking about books tonight, we are talking about a really fun series that's called the Legendary Guardians trilogy. We are going to be talking with my good friend here, and I just want to get that before I get into JF Monroe here. Monroe. Sorry, I'm so sorry that I screwed your last name there. I'm terrible with last names, by the way. So
Don't
we'll
worry.
say JF Monroe. She is on the show with me tonight, and I want to make sure that she is known, that she is loved, that she's appreciated, and I'm excited to have her on. And I'm doing everything in my power for my guest here, ladies and gentlemen, so that we don't get the shocking content, because apparently I can only assume it was maybe my owlbear. Those are pretty scary. Uh, but that's just a tangent in itself. So let's actually get into this tonight's episode. So, you know, do I call you JF? Do I call you Miss Monroe? How would you like to be
JF.
addressed? JF.
JF is
All right,
fine.
I like that. That's cool. So we're diving into the world of angels and demons and humans. They share the same skies, and the Four Horsemen aren't exactly what you think. Uh, you are joining me tonight to talk about the Legendary Guardians trilogy, a fantasy series where that mixes mythic stakes, emotional depth, and even a loyal German Shepherd as a sidekick. Um, so I, I don't know. Do you ever play D&D or any nerdy games?
I play a lot of video games. My one
Okay.
biggest regret is that I never got into D&D.
Well, we'll change
I
that. We're
was
going to change
I
that.
watched Critical Role, and so that's
Okay.
kind of like my intro into it. But have I ever
Hmm.
played it? Unfortunately, no.
Oh,
I know
see,
it hurts.
we're gonna have to change that. We're gonna have to change that. Well, so I will, another little side tangent. I've had the since you play video games, did you happen to play a game called Baldur's Gate 3?
So I have not played Baldur's Gate 3. It is on my TV list though.
Okay. Well, I have a lovely friend who's on there. Her name is Holly Marie Michael. She is a voice actress on that video game. She is too never played D&D, and she's in a D&D based game. So we're going to be having her on the show. And actually, we're doing that, ladies and gentlemen, with CFX Incorporated. They're going to be hosting that in November. So be on the lookout for that. But yes, I would love to have you as a player for a D&D game, because we always love getting people into those nerdy things. But
Yeah.
the reason I asked that question is I am an adamant DM. I have been doing D&D for 29 years, and there's nothing more that I love than mixing mythology with my fantasy. And you know, I, I've thrown my fair share of the Four Horsemen into my campaigns, so I'm excited to see someone who actually put them into a book and made them a little more sympathetic. So a lot of people have reimagined the Four Horsemen before. What made you think that you could tell a new story in the Mythic Sandbox with them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So this all started when I was actually on maternity leave with my son.
Hmm.
He, you know, after a while, you can't work anymore. You can't really do a lot of things when you are on maternity leave because you're kind
Hmm.
of bedridden. And I had watched a show called Supernatural where
Love
they
it.
kind of, yeah, they dove into the Four Horsemen. And honestly, it was the first time that I had seen them fleshed out in a way that I thought was really, really intriguing, where they had these human hosts as vessels. And I
Hmm.
was like, that's really cool. I like that idea. And then they kind of took it away, and I kind of took it another way, where I was like, all right, that's not how I would have done it. This is how I would have done it. And so that's where the concept developed, where my
Mhm.
interest kind of peaked for them. And so I went to find out all that I could about them,
Mhm.
going to the Book of Revelation. You don't find much, surprisingly. They have like a maybe a paragraph of their entrance, and then that's about it. That's the last that you hear about them. Which I thought was like, okay, I have a lot to work with because they don't really say much in this book.
Yeah, no.
Um, and so I kind of fell down the rabbit hole. I love researching. I was really big on mythology in college. Like
Mhm.
I minored in it. I probably would have majored in it if I wanted to, just with the amount of classes that I took.
Mhm.
And one line in the Book of Revelation that I actually read and misunderstood was the forefront of this trilogy. And it was, go ahead.
No, 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 please go. This is tantalizing here. What was it?
It was when Death is making his entrance, and they say that Hades comes behind him, travels behind him with the dead. And I was like, what? Because you're taking, you're taking a different mythology and mixing it with another, and I've never seen that before. And that was my um, misinformation because they weren't talking about the Greek mythology Hades. They were talking about like the god of the dead that was in that particular mythology in the Book of Revelation. And so, but I love that line. It was my favorite line out of the entire paragraph. And so, what I did was from that line, develop this entire trilogy.
So the origins of this is not specifically so it was a line in the book. Was there when you started creating your characters, when you started creating the book itself, did you just have that image in your head first? Was it just the line you could visualize it in your mind, your mind's eye? Or did you, because of Supernatural, were you able to, did it start off with a specific character that was where you developed the story around?
Yeah, so it was that line. I, for
Okay.
some reason, could visualize that line. And I noticed as I started writing the book, because it started as a screenplay. I was
Oh.
like, this sounds amazing. And did a lot of script writing
Mhm.
in college. And so I was theater, I was classics mythology, I was creative writing, all that great stuff, anything to get away from math. And so it started as a script and it couldn't be confined to like the 90 pages, that
So
90 minutes that the script holds.
is
So
that what pushed you to make it into a novel, or did you just were like, maybe it would be transition, it would be interpreted better as a novel?
no, it pushed me into doing a novel. I couldn't get it down
Mhm.
to finishing into what a script would call for. It
Mhm.
just didn't fit. It wasn't going to work. I couldn't do it. And so I was like, let me just try a different format. And so slowly I started writing it out. It was supposed to be one book, and then
Mhm.
it turned into three. And so I just kind of went along on this journey that was kind of being written for me, um, and seeing where it went because I was excited about the narrative that I was telling as it continued to grow. So it was based off that one line. How I write tends to be like I have to see it in order to write
Mhm.
it. And so when I saw that line, I'm like, that's my starting point. I need this in a book or in some type of format where I can visually see it.
Mhm.
And then from that grew the other narratives of it, the additions. So
Yeah.
Hades was obviously going to be a character in it, and then the Four Horsemen were going to make their statement. And I had a another character that I added in from the beginning to kind of be us, like from the point of view of like the reader almost.
Mhm. I like that. I was going to ask, are you like me? So when I'm creating D&D games, I envision the world in my head and I can almost play with it like it's a video game where I can zoom in and zoom out and I see my characters and I can kind of feel their personalities. Is that your writing method? Is it like watching a movie in your head?
Yes, it's 100% watching a movie in my head. If I cannot
I
see
love
it, I
that.
really struggle with writing it. And so I have to see it. It has to play out as a movie in my head, and then I can kind of try to do it justice putting it onto paper.
I
Which
love
is
that.
why I feel like I would struggle with D&D because I can feel the characters, I can
Mhm.
feel the narrative in my head, but the structure, like, sometimes they are like, are you a plotter or a pantser? I'm a pantser. I am not a plotter. I can't even make an outline to save my life. And so I think I attempted D&D a couple of years ago,
Mhm.
you have to be on it. Like the structure, the characters that are built out. I was like, my brain got overwhelmed. So
I love you. You are so sweet. I wish my players thought like you did. You have that. See, no, what you're doing right there, you are using that mom responsibility right there, and like that's not at all what happens. And I'm kind of judging you a little bit, not because you're saying all these amazing things, but because you've watched Critical Role and you've seen Sam Riegel and
yes,
you've seen Travis and you know exactly how they play.
yes,
And you now I know that you know how they play, but I know I can tell like you're adorable. You're like you're such a mom. You want to be like, yes, but I know I have to be responsible. And bless you for your integrity there. I have one out of my maybe seven players that typically play with me that hold themselves to that accountability. So bless your heart.
exactly. No, and that's honestly what it is. Like Sam
Yeah.
Riegel and Trav, like I feel that they've
Mhm.
earned the right to be like the way they are and make those calls and
Oh,
decisions.
pish
Whereas I'm
posh.
like, I know I have to get it out of my head, but like how I even in my life, my day-to-day life, feel like growth is earned, right?
Mhm.
And so when I look at those players, I'm like, oh my God, those are like veterans in my mind. I'm like, oh gosh, they've been around, they've done it so many times. If they mess up on a decision, it's fine. They'll be all right. They'll make it. And it's just like
Oh, you're so
that's how I
sweet.
roll.
Oh my gosh. Oh, you have won my heart, madam. I just want you to know, like the whole, you're holding yourself accountable and the integrity that you hold yourself to. When in reality, most of these games are, first off, you haven't taken into the account that the dice gods be damned for you. So like they will always hold you in that. Uh,
Yeah.
but kind of going back to your book a little bit here, we do see a lot of epic myth in modern day humanity or human stories and everything. Like you see a lot of that. Not judging you here, but like, what do you think other writers got wrong? And, what makes your writing fantasy style more fluent or more flows better?
Yeah. So what I love so much about fantasy. It's just you could do whatever you want with it.
Mm,
There's dragons, and once you have dragons, you can literally do anything in your fantasy book, and it's not shocking to readers. Um, and I love it. It's not necessarily what they do wrong, it's how I read them and then figure out how my book could potentially stand out against something like that.
gotcha. Gotcha.
And so, what I try to do is if I see a lot of books right now that are invested in fairies or in dragons, I'm like, all right, I'm not doing that. Why would I do that? It's being launched, it's being done, they're doing it well. I picked the Four Horsemen because it's been a concept I've been working on, and I was like, I've heard about them. They're in fantasy books, but they're not as prevalent as like what's going on right now in the fantasy world today. And then what I do, and this is something lacking, but I really tried hard to ground my characters in deeply human journeys. I haven't seen a fantasy book yet, maybe besides like the Mistborn trilogy, that touches like a Lord of the Rings type trilogy, right? And it's not even a trilogy, but like the three books that we're aware of. And so, even as like wild and crazy things are happening around my characters, the key for me is to keep their reactions and their emotions to the chaos completely relatable and human. And
I
so,
like that.
like, if I say, Steve, you're in the Legendary Guardians reunions, right?
Love it.
How do I think Steve, as a person, as a human, would react to these like ridiculously fantastical situations? Because it's not supposed to be that they adapt automatically.
Mm,
Heroes lose, right? Um, Villains win sometimes. And so there's certain things that have to happen for the narrative to move forward. And that's what I focus on. It's the characters' responses to the extraordinary situations that really make the stakes in the book feel real. And that's what I dwell on throughout the trilogy.
I like that. I'm going to be absolutely honest. If I saw the Four Horsemen coming up to me, I probably wouldn't act very adult-like and probably not very professional. I would not handle it very well. I'm going to be absolutely honest here.
There's not
No,
a lot of professional people in my book, so you don't have to worry about
I'm
that.
I'm probably going to chuck up the deuces and go, nope, I'm out. Like that's it. Like,
That's fair.
I know how I would survive in a horror movie because I see the scary thing, I'm gonna go, nope, and completely go the opposite way. Um,
Yeah.
all right, so let's kind of go in more into creating this book. And how did you establish the rules of your world? What were kind of some of the guiding principles, deciding what was possible and what wasn't possible? This is a fantasy, but you still want to, again, you said you grounded your characters. You still want to have some type of limitations. How did you decide what was and what wasn't?
That was a journey just because it's a double-edged sword. What I love is to keep the characters very human, but I have to be careful because they're still at the end of the day, this is a fantasy book and stuff still has to happen. Like they can't say like, hey, I'm not gonna do this. It might be the smart thing to do, but I'm not really feeling it right now. They have to like kind of face the challenges that are given to them. And so what I do is I try to realistically as a fantasy can get, make the challenge always present for them. So even if they're like, I don't want to go that way. That seems like a dangerous way. Some kind of, you know, deus ex machina is pushing them towards that way. They're going to end up there regardless. And
Mhm.
so, for the world, admittedly, just full transparency, world building is not my jam. It's a challenge for me. So when I describe places and I set up the rules of different places, it's very much like here.
Mhm.
Like they're just divided into territories. So we have, us walking around. I call that place Terra Vista, right? So it's just us kind of going about our day-to-day lives. But then, south of us is what we would call like the Void Heart, and that's where the demons live. And so they're divided by territories. And then we have like Arcadia, Shadowfort, and all of those things. What I try to do is there's rules, but they're vague. They're left up to like interpretation, which is why our characters are always going through it because they're like, they're supposed to be rules. People mention the rules, but nobody ever really says what the rules are. And it's actually a very big proponent of going into the second book where they're like starting to doubt the rules, like they're the only ones following it because they're the heroes, the quintessential heroes, and they're like, there's rules to these things, but everyone around them is breaking the rules. So at the end of the day, are there really are there really rules to this
I
game?
like that you brought that up, that heroes, and I know that's kind of a looser term because we're being honest here, the Four Horsemen are notoriously known as, they are the agents of destruction.
Yes.
And you've described them in your book. It was more of a guardians. What does that mean by when you're reimagining them as like these guardians, these pseudo heroes?
Yeah. So when I wrote the world, in order to keep up with the demons and the angels and following the treaty, obviously when you look at it big picture, humans don't stand a chance against demons and angels if that treaty breaks for some reason. And
Mm.
so they got the Four Horsemen, who are these legendary guardians that are, I don't want to spoil too much but the
Yeah,
book's finished.
sorry.
So no, no, but they're helping the humans for a reason, for a particular
Mm.
reason. But in order to do that, they need these human vessels. And so what the humans do is every now and then depending on whatever happens to the previous vessels, they go through these trials to be selected by the Four Horsemen. And so there are some counterparts behind these mechanisms
Mm.
that allow that to happen. And so the representatives for the humans kind of put forth the legendary guardians, which are the Four Horsemen, as protectors. So I
I
thought it
like
was an
that.
interesting concept because they're usually known for like bringing about the end of the world. And I was like, all
Yeah.
right, well, what if they have to save it? And so I love doing stuff like that, like flipping it on their heads, so to speak.
Hmm.
Of like, oh well, it's kind of always seemed like this, but what if it seemed like this? And just flip it and see what happens.
I like that. And now we did talk about a little bit in the intro that there is a sidekick, a special little sidekick, and a kind of wrapping this back to my little D&D thing, like no D&D party doesn't have their mascot. So kind of tell us about this German Shepherd companion. because a loyal dog in the apocalypse just seems so adorable, and the fact that it's just this pleasant German Shepherd is even better.
I loved it. I loved every second of writing about Mac. And Mac is a very integral part to the story.
Mm.
He is that, loyalty to a fault best friend of the main female character, whose name is Shade, to the point where, she's being told, we got to go, we got to leave, let's get in the car, let's go. And she's like, you're going to hold on 1 second. I got to get my dog. And like everything's blowing up. And like that's her thought. And it stemmed from my watching my niece with her dog, who's like this
Mm.
little Chihuahua rat thing, and that I love. I love him. But like the way she treats him, I'm like, oh, like she treats him like a baby, like her child. And I was like, I want that loving, like non-changeable relationship to be in the
Mm.
book. So like there's different relationships in my book, and they're complex and they're gray and they're complicated and they're tough. Never with Mac and Shade. Like there's just nothing but love there. Even when she's angry, like she doesn't stay angry at him because she can't, because he's just like this absolute embodiment of like love and loyalty and like, hey, I'm over here and I'm gonna just kind of stick with you until the end and see what happens. The best way to describe it is I Am Legend.
Mm.
Uh I
Oh
like
no,
I
don't go down that path with the
I don't
dog.
mind spoiling this. We don't go back. I won't do it. I can't do it. I wouldn't do it and I'll never do it. So don't ever worry about that in my books. But like the bond of just like
I
that dog followed
totally
him
get that.
everywhere, defended him to a fault, like did not care. That was his person. That is the bond that I threw into the book because
I love that.
yeah, and like and same with I Am, like it gets pretty dark sometimes. And so you always need like that little glimmer of like here's Mac coming around and, licking her face or something like that. Like just making sure like everything's okay. So
How do you keep it from going too dark? Or if you do go too dark, how do you reset yourself as a writer? Because you are a person of theater and you are a person of the arts, and you can get that emotional development and you can get yourself in those personal dark places. How do you recover from that personally?
yeah, absolutely. I have to sit with it.
Mhm.
Not because it's difficult for me. It's difficult for me. It is. It's a challenge, but more because I want to respect what I'm writing about for people who it
Mhm.
might potentially trigger. So like there's again, fantastical things happen. There's blood, there's battles. But there's
Mhm.
also like deep trauma embedded in a lot of the characters. And so like when they do talk about stuff like that, I am so very careful and so very respectful. Like a lot of research went into writing those scenes. And so I
Mhm.
do allow myself to sit with it while I'm writing it. But then I
Mhm.
try to go and do something completely opposite afterwards, like something light, something that will just kind of take me a little bit away from it because
Mhm.
it's heavy and you don't want to stay in the heavy for too long. But I did want to stay in the heavy enough to respect what I was writing and not upset anybody with it. And so I
Man,
think I managed that balance.
mhm.
I hope I managed.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was like, yeah, want to make sure you respect, you want to have that respect for it because it is impactful, and that is your job as a writer is to make people feel things, and that's how you're doing your job right, whether it's making them laugh, making them cry, and I respect you on that. And kind of going a little bit more into that, your stories love to explore love and how they collide with duty. Was that your theme to set out when you were writing these, or were you going in a different direction when you initially started?
I knew that romance was going to be a subplot to the fantasy. I didn't want it
Mhm.
to overwhelm. And so love was 100% going to be in it just because this also touches on found family and reunions and second chance families and things like that. So it was love in different capacities.
Mhm.
But yeah, but there was always a subplot of the romance. My two main characters have been driven apart for a very long time, and in this first book they kind of reunite, which is why it's called Reunions. There's a lot of other reunions that happen, but mainly it's them two reuniting and going on this journey together. And so I try to make the love versus duty as realistic as possible. It is a grappling
Mhm.
situations, particularly but in one of the characters, Theo. He has an immense task ahead of him. He is the vessel for the Horseman Death. So he's kind of leading the Horsemen on this journey where he's still trying to figure some stuff out while also managing the fact that now his, shade has been brought into it, and is taking this journey with them against his better judgment. And so I am very careful with like the nuances there. I never want it to overlap the story, but it is
Mhm.
present. Yeah, like I don't
Nice.
shy away from
Good, good, good. I love that. Was there a character that you were writing in throughout these books? Was there one that surprised you that you wanted to be more invested in?
it. There's one that surprised me that I became more invested in.
Okay.
And that is Laz. He's the son of Sloth, and he was supposed to have like three sentences in the
Mm,
book. Like just he was like almost like a transporter type individual. Take shade, get us
yeah.
for the rest of the sins, and goodbye. Laz had a mind of his own. I will stand by this that he completely wrote himself. I don't know what happened with him, but he became a very integral part of the story.
I love
Um,
that.
and an immense fan favorite from the people who have read the book so far. So I, to this day, don't know how it happened, but it happened, and he turned out to be probably one of my favorite characters to write for.
I like that. I love it when a character surprises you. Um,
Yeah.
you kind of talked about like you, Lord of the Rings, and you said you were inspired by the Hunger Games. Uh, how do you personally take inspirations from those while also blending high stakes survivals with intimate emotional storytelling? I know that's a deep one
That
right there, right?
is a great question. Yeah, let
Who
me
knew we were
take
going to
the
throw the deep
first.
ones on here?
I love it. It's a great question. I'm going to take the first one because that's
Yeah.
probably the easier one to do. Lord of the Rings, I love that. I love that series. I read the book when I was way too young to understand the
How old
impact.
were you?
11, 12.
I'm that's awesome. So before you answer this question, I'm super like proud of my son. All right. And I'm not
Okay,
flexing on you here because that's an impressive age to read it.
do
He
it.
was 9 and he read all of them and all of the Hobbit books over the summer. Like
That's
I
cool.
didn't even he went and he just picked them up. Did not even do that. Never. I haven't even finished them all. Like I haven't. And he killed them.
They are
So
timeless.
so props to you. And I'm so sorry. That was such a rude interruption, but I was just like, I'm
No,
so curious. I had to know how young.
I'm going to give him more props because I read it at 12 and was like, what? I don't know. Like maybe it was my immaturity, but like when I read it, it was like oh, okay. All right.
Mhm.
And then I saw the movie that came out a couple of
Mhm.
years after or whatever. And I was like, what? So I went back and read the books at an older age. And I'm
Mhm.
like, wow, all the things that you missed, right? So like at 9, I think that's a beautiful, like the fact that he went through those books, but I would encourage him as he gets older, read those books again because
100%.
you see just like how much you missed. And that was me, like to a fault. I missed
100.
so much, the ordinary kind of changing the world type of themes. And they stick with you. The hero that doesn't necessarily win at the end. Like it was just so incredibly beautiful to the point that it stays with me to this day.
I
And so
love
when
that.
I wrote this trilogy, I wanted to embody some of those themes with respect to Lord of the Rings. I'm not looking to
Mhm.
write another Lord of the Rings. There's no way I'm doing that. But I wanted to respect those themes and
Mhm.
incorporate some of them into that book. Like if I had to pick a book where I'm like, this is what I would love to kind of like feed off of, so that's the trilogy that I would love to do
I
it. And I
love that.
followed their outline too. Like he had Fellowship where like the Fellowship kind of comes together, and then Two Towers where it's like, oh my God, things are happening and battles are brewing. And then Return of the King, which is like that epic climax of it. And so that's how I tried to kind of even set up my trilogy of like reunions. Everyone's kind of getting together. Oh, the second book, things are starting to happen and they're not great. And then the third book of like, let's wrap it up and see how big we can go with it. Um, and so that's how it kind of influenced me. And with Hunger Games, I love the rebellion aspect of it. The way that she writes is so incredibly subtle, but the messages that she tells, Suzanne Collins, is
Mhm.
just incredible. And she's continuing to do that. Like she just dropped Sunrise on the Reaping, and it's the how she interconnects things. And she even does it a lot crazier because she goes back and forth. Like she jumps. So like she did Katniss's, and then she went to President Snow's backstory, where everyone was like, "Oh my God, we kind of like President Snow," and then she dropped Haymitch's story, and we were like, "No, we hate President Snow. He's the absolute worst." And she reminded us of that. And so it's just how she plays with the reader's emotions. I was like, "Yes, that's what I want to kind of carry over to the
I
trilogy."
like that.
So it's not so much like, "Oh my God, I love this scene. I'm going to try to incorporate it into this book." It
Yeah,
was more
no,
of like themes and messaging and stuff
no,
like
I
that.
I totally get that. Yeah, when you wrote your third book, were you prepared to end it in the third book? Did you think, okay, this is how I want to end it, this is where I'm going to end it, or did you, like many enthusiasts about the, where that when you create this world and you've created all these characters, closure is a very difficult thing. Did you want to keep pursuing the story in your mind, or even potentially in another book? Are you going to continue the stories?
It's a really great question. And I'm going to be completely honest and transparent because I feel like a lot of people think that this is like a really cut and dry question, and it's
Uh-huh.
not, at least for me. So I'm just going to tell you my journey with it. I'm not saying it's the right way to go, but it's what I did. When I went into
Okay.
book one, I had no idea what I was doing. I
Okay.
was simply just telling the story, and I was like, let's see where it will go. One of my favorite quotes is from Terry Pratchett. He wrote Good Omens, and he said the first, I'm going to slaughter it, but he basically said, like, hey, write the first draft because the first draft is just you telling yourself the story. I was like, I love that. No pressure. That's how I'm going to carry through the entire trilogy of this trilogy. Like that's what I'm going to do.
Hmm.
And so when I wrote the first one, I had no idea. I had no idea how it was going to end. I didn't even have really a middle. I was just like, this is what I know, and I'm going to keep writing until I figure it out.
Hmm.
You actually, and again, 100% transparency here, you see that in the first book. Like when you're reading it, and I've gotten feedback on this, they're like, it's a good book. We like the book, but you can see it. Like, there's a little clunky sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, probably a little clunky. And then you go into the second book and you just start to see the flow even out a little bit. And you
Hmm.
start to see, like, okay, like she knows where it's going now. Like there's direction in the second book. And I love telling that part because I have no shame in that whatsoever. I love my first book. It was my learning as I go experience, and you see it. And then you see my second book, and that was me learning from my first book. And hopefully my third book, when it does come out, is me learning from the first two, and is just as good, if not better.
Hmm.
I knew from the second book, maybe about four chapters in, I was like, I got the ending. I know how this is gonna end. And so that's how I carried it out.
Was it difficult? Was it hard to bring that closure to an end, or were you just like, no, this is a story that needs to be told the way this way, and once it's told, I am content with it.
I was very content with
Mhm.
how it was told. When I was still figuring it out in book one, I'm like, I don't know how this is gonna, like, what is happening? You just
Mhm.
you worry a little bit. You have that creative doubt seep in a little.
Mhm.
But I kept telling myself, like, nobody's seen this, nobody really knows you're even doing this. Like, just keep going, see where it goes. Like, you don't ever have to do anything with this. It could just be for you. Like, no pressure, just do it. Like, get it out. You have a story to tell, so tell it. And so when I did it and I finally figured out the end, I just went headlong into the end. Like I'm like, we're going to just go full steam ahead. And I was really content with it. One of the people that read the book asked if I would consider doing any type of like spin-off.
Mhm.
I would consider a spin-off. I wouldn't continue this particular story. Like when
Okay.
this story ends, it's over. It ends.
Mhm.
So,
That's always good. And again, I'm when I'm asking these questions and what I'm thinking is I'm doing it from the DM's point of view because
mhm.
I have created characters and I know. where I want them to end. And if that character has to die, or if that, that is where their story ends, I'm okay with that. And that is fine. And but there are characters that I have created and I'm just like, I wonder what he's up to right now. Like what would he be
Yeah.
doing? And so it's it's fun to pretend that and to see what can happen. And I love asking writers these questions because in your head, you've done tenfold more than what is on that paper. And so nobody gets to, it's almost selfish of you. You get to experience all these amazing things in your head that we as the readers don't get to see behind the scenes and don't get to experience.
Yeah.
So it's you understand as a writer where it's coming from. So, but it's so fun to find out like yeah, I could see them going on further in this, and or I could see this character doing that. But
Yeah.
I kind of digress there. You know, kind of going into this because you self-published, and that is a very, very difficult thing to do because I want to get into that. Let's start with the very simple question. Let's get the basic one out of here. Why did you choose to self-publish?
Lack of patience.
Go on.
I so I
Spill the
knew that
tea, madam.
I knew that self-publishing was an option, and
Uh,
I knew that there was trad publishing as well, traditional publishing. I was,
hmm
every writer thinks like, oh, traditional publishing, like of course, why wouldn't I? Like
hmm
they pay for everything. They do everything for you. The marketing, which is a beast all on its own, and I can talk about that later, but that in and of itself is like trad publishing. That makes the most sense. But in order to do trad publishing, you need a traditional publisher to actually look at you. And to do that, you do these things called query letters. And so query letters are basically you pitching your story to publishers, which sounds really easy and is easy for a lot of people. Not me. I'm not a salesperson by nature. I can't pitch anything, including my own books. Like if you just were like drop everything and pitch the Legendary Guardians reunions, I'd forget the title. Like you can't do that to me. You can't put me on the spot. I freak out. I get overwhelmed easy. I have anxiety. I'm a human person. And so I sent out less than 10 queries
hmm
and I was done. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. And so I went the self-publishing route. And again, this does not work for everybody, but this was a passion for me. Like this was not going to pay my bills. This is
hmm
not something that I was like, this is going to blow up and I'm going to be a millionaire. Like that's not going to happen. Um, I love this story. I thought it was a story worth telling. I made the time to do it and to write it. It became a passion and I got it. And then I decided I wanted out there. And so at the end of the day, for me, it didn't necessarily matter how it got published, just that it got published. And so, like, I get that other authors are like, no, trad publishing, like, we want to be traditional publishing. I get that. And I totally support it. Just
hmm
wasn't, I didn't want to wait anymore. I wanted it out there. So I did it.
I respect that because in my mind, the first thing when you're talking about it, like you had to put out these queries, is how self demoralizing is that with those rejections or the lack thereof of responses. Uh, I am a man of passion and I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So, if I know for a fact, my first thought would be like, well, I suck at life. I should just probably stop this.
They're terrible. Like, and the rejections are not mean. They're very
Mm.
nice, but that almost hurts more. And so, like, I don't usually go into things with ego, but even I was like, I can handle a lot of rejection. This is
Was
intense.
did it definitely feel like it's you, not me sort of situations
Yeah,
relationship was?
like it does. It's a little contentious too. Like I'm like, because
Oh,
then you start questioning it and you start getting defensive, right? And you're like, well,
uh,
who's reading these queries? Like, what are their qualifications? And then you go through like those stages of grief
yeah,
where you're just
yeah.
like, no, no, not mine. They obviously didn't read something right, and you go through like anger and denial, and then you have acceptance. And so when I got to acceptance, I'm like, I'm kind of done. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. So, and I mean, choosing to self-publish is very commendable, but it's also very messy. It is, you are the one wearing all the hats. Looking back at it now, what would you have done differently?
I would have hired someone to format my book, which I did. I
Hmm.
did. I had published The Legendary Guardians. I self-published it. It looked a lot different than what it is now. Not
Hmm.
crazy different, but it was different than what it is now, formatting wise. And formatting is pretty important in a book. And I would say if you're going to invest any type of monies into this, formatting, like watch your formatting, make the inside of the book appealing. Um,
Hmm.
I went on Fiverr for the cover,
Hmm.
totally affordable. I used the same person for the second book. Awesome. I had an awesome experience. Fiverr's great. It's a great website for just grabbing like a contractor, a consultant that will just do it for a certain amount of money. Um, it's not a big deal, and they made the books look brilliant. And they give it to you with KDP, like width and length and all of that stuff. Like they do it for you, which is pretty cool. But yeah, formatting, I went back and I did it because I knew like, okay, that's important. But I did my own editing. I read that book out loud, which was highly embarrassing even when I was by myself. Um, but you need to because if you're not going to hire like an editor, because they're a little expensive and they need to be. They're making
Yeah.
their living too, and I get that. I didn't have that type of money, and so I was like reading it out loud is what's going to happen, and so I did pretty well. I had nobody's
Hmm.
called me out on a typo or a mistake. Um, and so yeah, formatting. I would definitely say just watch your formatting in the book and make sure you edit, even if you read it out loud, like your grammar and punctuation, because it could be a turn off to some readers. I've
Hmm.
been there, and so
Yeah.
it's important.
So because you did self-publishing, what would you say is your biggest reward versus, what was your biggest gut punch?
My biggest reward of self-publishing, gosh, this is gonna be so cliche, but like actually doing
Mm.
it,
Uh,
I am very introverted by nature. I don't like to be out in the public a lot. I will do it because I have like this lovely passion that makes me do it. And I will do things like this because this is like one-on-one, and so I feel
hmm.
a lot more comfortable.
Hmm.
But putting something so vulnerable out there in the world, such as this narrative, took a lot of guts. And so I did it, and I was really, really proud of that. Everything
Hmm.
else was just, extra at that point because I was like, I did the hardest part. I published it. Gut punch, marketing. And it's not so much a gut punch as it is I'm bad at it.
Hmm.
And I had to get somewhat good at it in order to get this book into as many hands as possible.
Hmm.
And so, like, I had to become very well acquainted with social media real fast. I am not great still, but I'm better. And so it's not so much a gut punch as like maybe I recovered quicker than, than normal. It was something where when I published it, I got so excited and I was like, go book into the world and people will now read you because you're published. And that's obviously not how it goes. It's much different. And so I have a TikTok now and I have an Instagram and I publish on Tuesdays and Thursdays like clockwork. And I'm impressed with my growth in that. But if
I
I
love that.
wish I had like stuff like trad publishing, that's where like trad publishing comes into play because they do all that stuff for you. And so
Yeah.
it's like if you do get selected, wow, congratulations. I think that's like absolutely amazing. You do what you got to do because they do cover everything, but you can do it if you self-publish. It gets messy. It does. But as long as you're okay with it being a little messy and still push forward, you'll make it. You'll be all right. I did it. And I always love to say, like, if I do it, you could do it. You could do it.
So
Yeah.
take us back to that moment when you first got that first box with your first books in it, and you opened it up and you looked at it and you held your book in your hand. What was that initial thought, and what was the feeling that was going through you when you got to see you have created life in the form of a book?
I was proud. I was really, really proud when I held that book. I was like, you're real. You're absolutely real. And like, I'm holding you, and now other people can hold you. And that's really weird. And that's my name on the cover, and that's my dedication, and that's my table of contents. And I did every single part of that book with help from like family and friends. Like they were all very, very helpful to me. There's just some things I needed help with. Um, but I did it. I did it, and I was so immensely proud of myself. No matter like how messy it gets,
Hmm.
no matter what place you get stuck in, like holding that book is a wild experience.
I love that. Okay. So we've talked about the process. We've talked a bit about the books. Um, let's kind of talk about the future of the Legendary Guardians. Let's talk about Descent into the Void Heart. That dropped this summer.
Yeah.
Uh, without giving me spoilers, what can fans expect in this book?
So this is where the meat of the journey comes to a
Mhm.
head. So a lot of stuff happens in this book. They are headed to the Void Heart. That is the first stop in their journey. That is the land of demons.
Mhm.
They are looking for allies to fight against the main big bads of the story
Mhm.
because they realize that they can't do it alone and that there might be allies out there. And so their first stop is the Void Heart. And so, really, the book two is them completely navigating through the Void Heart and trying to form those alliances. I will be completely transparent. It was my favorite book to write of the trilogy.
I love
Um,
that.
yeah, you get a lot of ridiculous character development. I get to play
Mhm.
around with like these, I get to establish and play around with these characters a lot more. You get to see their relationship shine. That's where, whereas world building might be a weakness of mine, character development is my place in the world of fantasy. And so I got to play around with a lot of the characters, with their feelings, with their inner, traumas, with their wins. Um, Also had to put on my big girl pants and write some intense battles because like this is where stuff happens that
Mhm.
just leads straight into book three, which is our climax, which is like the end. And so a lot of stuff happens in book two. It's very fast paced, which I actually really love. From the first
Mhm.
chapter on, I'm not big on sugarcoating or fluffing anything. Like it's there's detail when there needs to be detail, but it's really just get on board and see where it goes. Um, and it was the most fun to write.
I love that. So, because this is the third, this is the final, what do you want your readers to feel when they finish that last word, when they finish that last page?
I want them to every author I think wants a reader to close the book and think about it afterwards.
Hmm.
Like they close the book, yeah, but they still think about the characters and what happened in the books and what maybe potentially happens in the future for those characters. Like you don't want them to just close the book and be like, all right, next. Um, so I want them to close that book and just kind of sit with the characters for a little while. Like let it resonate with you. I want them to feel fulfilled. I'm a very big believer in you gotta reward what you do, right? So like I wrote
Mm,
three books. If you stood with me as a reader for three books, I
mm,
need to give you an ending that matches the tone of the three books. No cop outs, right? Like if I'm going to talk about a battle for two books or a war for two books and then don't give you a war in book three, that's a low for me. Like I would be very disappointed as a reader. Like I'm like, we were talking about this the whole two books. Where's
mhm.
my war? And so I'm very big on like make the payoff count. And I feel like I delivered in that. I feel like book three holds also one of the most cinematic scenes that I've ever written.
Okay.
It is one that I have had in my head since the first book, and I was like, this scene, no matter what is going in the book, I just got to figure out where it goes, and so that happens in the third book. And I do think that the payoff has a nice balance of fantastical, but also realistic. So I wouldn't call it like a happy ending, but it's not like this gut wrenching, oh my God, I can't take my head out of the pillow, I'm crying type of situation, which I've
I
read
love
some
that.
books like that, and it's just not a great feeling for me personally. So I try to
I get
strike a
that.
balance.
Yeah, no, I've definitely had a few books where I'm like, ah. I'm trying to think of one right now. Honestly, I'm just thinking of a movie right now, the new Nosferatu. Like how that was what was going in my head. Like that I felt dirty walking out of, but it was a good like you
Yes,
needed to feel bad and icky afterwards. It was well done, phenomenally
loved
well
it.
done. And Skarsgård is he is an amazing actor, everything he does. Uh,
Agreed.
but I felt icky, and
Yes.
I that was what you needed to feel after that.
Yeah.
Like so kind of talking about that was a great segue on my side. Kind of talking about like Hollywood and Netflix and stuff right here. Let's kind of like imagine
Oh
here.
no.
Oh yes, I'm going to put you in this hot seat right here. All right, so they come knocking at your door, madam. And who would you pick to play your Four Horsemen?
Okay, so believe it or not,
Who's your dream team?
I have been asked this question before. So I am
Oh
actually very
no,
scared.
no. Oh,
Um,
okay, give me the
when
answer.
I was first asked, completely off guard. I was like, I forgot names. I was like, I have them in my head. I'll describe like the movies he's in. I'm sorry. And I love that you mentioned Bill Skarsgård because what I do is I separate the horseman from the human vessel.
Mhm.
And so I had for my main uh male character, Theo, I had
Mhm.
this actor Nicholas Galitzine to play Theo. He was
Okay.
in, I think it was called Purple Heart on Netflix. And he was also in The Idea of You, that Anne Hathaway
Okay.
movie.
Yes.
Um, really like warm energy, which is
Mhm.
Theo. Like just a
Mhm.
warm, boyish energy of like bad things should not have happened to this kid, but they did. And that's really, really unfortunate. Like he's a good guy just trying to do the right thing, but he has the vessel of death within him. And the voice that I had of death was Bill Skarsgård.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Um,
So
okay, I love that. All right. Well, since you have already answered that question, madam, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little puffy chesty over here for that one. No, just kidding. All right. Well, you really haven't played D&D, so I can't ask you this question. Well, you played a little bit. Are you familiar with what a Nat 1 is?
natural one,
Yes. It's
maybe.
okay. A natural one is like you epically failing on a roll.
Okay.
If if your world were set as a D&D campaign, uh let's say you were playing the dungeon master, you were telling this story as you are as a writer.
Okay.
Which of your characters do you think would be the first one to roll that nat one? Which of them would be that first critical fail?
But okay, I have a clarifying question.
Go ahead.
In the critical fail, right? So like
Mhm.
what does that potentially mean? Critical fail to the group or critical fail like they're dead?
Artist interpretation. I will let you determine that. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. All right, you got me. You got me.
yeah.
I'm gonna put a little addendum on the natural one though.
Absolutely.
It's probably Laz because
Okay.
I can see him doing something ridiculous like that in my
Uh-huh.
head, like just it's on the line. Oh my God, we need good things, and he's like, I got this, and he throws it, and it's a natural one. That's his
I
luck.
love that.
I don't think it would kill him, but I definitely think it would cause consequences to the group, and he'd
Although
be okay with that.
100%. Okay.
Yeah,
So just so you know, rolling in that one does not kill off people. It usually ends up player hurting their own players. At least that's how in my campaigns or doing something dumb. But
Laz.
sometimes it can be funny,
Yeah,
which
no,
is even
it's
better.
definitely Laz.
Okay.
That's Laz.
I love that. All right, good. Now that I stumped you a little bit, now we can go on to, because we're starting to wrap this up, I want to do some lightning round questions here. Yeah, I'm a little vindicative over here.
I love it. I love it. Bring everything you got. I'm ready.
All right. So lightning round questions. You got to answer these as quickly as possible. Favorite fictional world to vacation in?
Valaris. That's in Akatar, which is one of the fairy books that I read.
Okay, awesome. I thought you were was talking Game of Thrones there for a second when I heard that, and I was like,
I'm not going to
no.
Game of Thrones, and we can't talk about Game of Thrones on this. have a lot of very strong opinions about Game of Thrones, and we can't get into it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. First book that made you cry.
Uh, oh my God, it's the letters of Anne Frank.
Oh my gosh, that is such an emotional one to read
Read
too.
it way too young for school, and I was like, "Are you traumatized me? Why would you do this?" Like, it was awful. It was an awful. It was a great book. It was an awful experience.
If the German Shepherd companion could talk, what would they say about you?
About me,
About you.
he would probably say that I use a lot of sarcasm to and humor to hide really serious conversations that I should be having. Yeah, I can see him definitely being like, you got some issues that you need to work on.
Which of the four horsemen would you want to grab a drink with?
Wyatt. War.
Okay, why?
Yeah. He is a lot of fun. He is
Okay.
just like a let it roll off your shoulders type of individual, and it's hilarious because the horseman he embodies is war, so they're very different. And I love playing with that in the narrative of like just they're just two different beings almost.
Hmm.
And he is like the jokester. Like he's always cracking the jokes. He's always like making light of different things, and so I think he would probably be the most fun to grab a drink with.
I love that. So, JF, this has been an amazing interview. This has been such a blast. Before we completely wrap this up, where can the good people out in Nerd Nation find you?
Yes. So I have a website. It is
Okay.
jfmonroebookshelf.com. So it has my books on there. It has a blog, Beyond the Veil, that I write every month. And it also has some social media on there as well that you can find me. I have an Instagram. It's just jf.monroe. And I have a
Mhm.
TikTok that's the same one. It's jf.monroe. I tried to make it as easy as possible. You can also find me on Goodreads. I have a unhealthy obsession with seeing my Goodreads be like my book being added to people's TBRs on Goodreads. I don't know why. I even made a video about it. I was like, I just love seeing that number go up. It just makes me happy. So I can be found on Goodreads too.
You know what? That's not even weird. That I think that's totally acceptable because you're getting to see the fruits of your labor and the blood, sweat, and literal tears that you have
Love
put
it.
into these, and your creation being adored by people all over the world. And I think that's amazing. So let's go ahead and let's wrap this up on our side. So, as always, please like, subscribe, and follow us wherever you are listening to your podcast. And if you are listening to us on Apple or Spotify, please remember to rate and review. We love them, we crave them, we need them so we can have amazing people like JF on the show. We're also on Instagram and Facebook, so please remember to like and follow us at DNA Pod or on our webpage, www.nerddnapod.com. I'm your host, Steve Pugh. I have been joined by the amazing, the adorable, the ever fantasy creating JF Monroe. Madam, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me, Steve. I had an absolute blast.
Love that. Thank you and good night.